The voice of sharing, Durian ASEAN.
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Good morning, this is Arlene and you're listening to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing. Today is a very lovely Thursday morning and we are going to share with you, as usual, news from Southeast Asia. So first off, we focus on Indonesia. As we all know, Indonesia currently in a hot mess. This is regarding on its death row clemency. So its death row this is regarding on Indonesia's death penalty controversy. In fact, to add salt to already a huge problem there in Indonesia when it comes to its diplomatic relations with the outside world in regards with death penalty, the Virgin's Branson, if you may know, Virgin Chief Richard Branson, he called for Indonesia's President Joko Widodo to spare the lives of drug offenders due to be executed soon. In fact, saying that death penalty was a failed deterrent while offering to fly to Jakarta for talks. So a lot of people are actually really concerned about this. As we all know, death penalty is a huge deal. A lot of the countries in European Union are in fact abolishing death penalty or death penalty have been abolished. Countries that have high rate of death penalty are not necessarily countries that are able to deter some of the crimes that are associated with death penalty. In the case of Indonesia, majority of them are not murderers or rapists, but majority of them are in fact drug offenders and drug smugglers. So Richard Branson, a member of the Global Commission on Drug Policy, he is very concerned about this issue and in fact wrote a letter to the President of Indonesia, published on Virgin's website, that he was willing to fly to Jakarta to discuss on the particular issue. A lot of people are really concerned about this, but in reality, Indonesia's President Joko Widodo is not really changing his mind as much, although he's now thinking about it. But in reality, based on the interview from Al Jazeera, the way he viewed the death penalty is a way of sending a message to drug smugglers and drug traffickers that you cannot do this in our own soil. In fact, majority of those who are being persecuted under death penalty in Indonesia are foreign citizens. The most infamous would be the Bali Nai currently, where two of them would be and two of them are Australians who are now pleading for their life. The plea for clemency came as Australian media already reported Sukumaran, 33 years old, only 33 years old in fact, have made a personal appeal to Widodo by painting a portrait of the president, signing it, "People can change." And it's true, if you see the lives of Sukumaran and Chan, also another person from Australia that are being persecuted, only 31 years old, have started various programs ranging from painting to photography to teaching kids in Kerobokan jail in Bali after their arrest in 2005 as ringleaders of the so-called Bali Nai drug smuggling gang. People can change, definitely, and I think President Joko Widodo need to sit down and discuss with various people from civil society, economists, psychologists, and people who can see the bigger picture regarding on not just death penalty but abolishing drug trafficking as a whole. So anyway, from Indonesia, we move to Malaysia, talking about dollars and cents. Bank Negara is definitely quite optimistic. According to Bank Negara report 2014, Malaysian economy will be growing from 4.5, or at least predicted to grow 4.5 to 5.5%. It is expected to expand when compared with the 6% growth last year amid a more challenging external environment. Bank Negara Malaysia Governor Tan Sri Dr. Zeti Akhtar Aziz, she mentioned that more moderate recovery of the global economy projected for 2015 is generating a challenging environment across both the advanced and the emerging economies. And although the growth momentum is strengthening in some countries, weaknesses in several major economies suggest that the global economy remains vulnerable to downside risks. In the case of Malaysia, it will be the significant decline in global oil prices. As we all know, a portion of the Malaysia's GDP does rely on the oil revenue, and the decline in oil prices have hit Malaysian GDP quite hard, in fact, in the stomach. In fact, she cautioned that uneven growth momentum prevailing in the global economy has raised the prospect of a divergence in the direction of monetary policy in the advanced economy, resulting in the shift in global liquidity and increased volatility in the international financial market. While Malaysia was not insulated from this global development, the diversified structure of Malaysian economy and strengthened fundamentals have, however, enhanced the economy's resilience. So in a way, Malaysia is still optimistic about its economy because in a way we have diversified. Quite a huge portion of our economy is based on different industries, different manufacturing, production, commodities and all that. In fact, she pointed out that economic growth in 2015 will continue to be primarily driven by private sector-led domestic demand, with some support from the expansion in exports. And in terms of mining and commodity sectors have an important role in the Malaysian economy, growth is expected to be sustained by broad-based expansion in the services, manufacturing and construction sector, and now account for more than 2/3 of the economy. So Malaysia does not really rely as much towards commodity and natural resources sector. It seems like we definitely have expanded our productivity in the service, manufacturing and construction sector, although investment is also increasingly being driven by capital spending by the non-energy related private sector and public enterprises. The lower inflation outlook and positive labour market conditions will continue support household spending during the year. So in all, Malaysia's GDP and also economy is definitely being seen as very optimistic. In fact, it acknowledges, Bank Negara acknowledges the implementation of the GST in April, and lower earnings in the commodity related sectors are expected to affect spending. Malaysian might be saving more than usual. The decline in global oil prices will lead to lower domestic fuel prices through the managed flood fuel pricing mechanism. So in a way, Malaysia is definitely moving towards the right kind of direction according to our chief Bank Negara. Although what she also want to mention is Malaysia's economy is well diversified, inflation is low, and the balance of payment position is resilient. Labour market conditions remain high. We will take one short break. When we return, we will talk about news from other Southeast Asian countries.
ASEAN Dailies, first and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene and you're listening to Duran ASEAN, back with our ASEAN Daily where we discuss news from Southeast Asia. So when it comes to issues related to Vietnam, usually people would think, for the West it would be the Vietnam War, but for Southeast Asia it would be other thing. But Vietnam is still caught up with that geopolitical divide between the US and Russia. In fact, US is asking Vietnam to stop helping Russian bomber flight. So why it is such an issue with the US when it comes to who Vietnam is dealing with, especially if the country is a former nemesis of the US, which is Russia, in this case, in the past during the Iron Curtain, where the divide between communism and, in this case, the Western world was so huge that countries like Vietnam became proxy playground for all these countries to fight against each other. So anyway, Vietnam's willingness to allow Russia to use Cam Ranh Bay reflects Hanoi's complex position in a geopolitical tug of war that frequently pits China and Russia on one side and the US, Japan, and much of Southeast Asia on the other side. I'm not sure. I think Malaysia would be quite on the fence when it comes to this kind of geopolitical war. And in fact, the US said that they have urged Vietnamese officials to ensure that Russia is not able to use its access to Cam Ranh Bay to conduct activities that could raise tensions in the region. And in the effort to boost ties with Vietnam, the US have been pouring in aid and assistance in all these sectors where Vietnam need the most, like health, education, landmine clearance, scholarships, and nuclear energy. But first question, why it is such a huge deal with the US? Why the US is so worried about the strengthening of relationship between Russia and Vietnam? When it comes to Russia, of course, the current situation, we will think about the Ukraine war and the MH17. But is the war, the geopolitical war between Russia and the US, is it really still such big a deal since the Cold War? Because Russia has transformed itself, although characters like Putin has definitely somehow enhanced that Cold War diplomacy between both the US and Russia, and now interestingly Vietnam is being caught in between this. It's like returning back to the Vietnam War, where things like Cold War is such a huge deal, but in this age of time where goods, services, people, and the age of internet, people move easily from one way or another. Globalization has somehow detached the world into less on ideology but more on self-determination. So for the US to assume that Vietnam's strengthened relationship with Russia means that they are reigniting the Cold War might not be an accurate one. Well, definitely the US is somehow very worried, and they think that this would definitely raise tension between all the countries that are involved in terms of dividing itself in this geopolitical struggle of both nations. But at the same time, in the case of ASEAN, if you're talking about Vietnam, people no longer associate Vietnam with the Cold War. In fact, when we talk about Vietnam, we will think about the struggle with China on the South China Sea, the same with the Philippines, and the struggle of Vietnam in ASEAN is less about ideological war, but more about trying to take advantage of the economic opportunities, especially with the formation of ASEAN economic community. So it's quite interesting to see how the US is not seeing it that way with Vietnam, but seeing Vietnam as still continuing the Cold War era practice where they are assisting Russian bomber assisting Russian bomber patrol flight. So in this case, we just wait and see what's next with the response from the Vietnam officials as well as from Russian side. Another news that are definitely climbing up another news that is definitely facing a lot of battle is Indonesia's battling the human trafficking. As we all know, Southeast Asia has a very high number of human trafficking, including Malaysia. In fact, we are considered the hub of Southeast Asia in terms of human trafficking. But Indonesia is also facing difficulties combating human trafficking due to various factors, including the involvement of state officials, the fact that the illegal industry is second only to drug trafficking in terms of profits generated for criminals. An organization has mentioned, which is the International Organization for Migration Indonesia. In fact, eradicating human trafficking was also hampered by limited funding from the state budget and its entanglement with international crime network. As we all know, black market like human trafficking is definitely a lucrative business. And in fact, according to data from the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime, the rate is second only to drug businesses. Those involved in the human trafficking are also people in uniform, or in this case, police forces, military forces, and their numbers are many. Indonesians definitely need to be brave to get the facts and compile the evidence so that they can find the links between the traffickers, as quoted by Antara News Agency and Indonesian News Network. So migrant workers are often the main victims in the trafficking business. Of course, you're not just talking about unskilled and uneducated migrant workers, but also you're talking about workers that are not necessarily documented. In this case, would be prostitution and all that. Meanwhile, the Pekanbaru police in Riau give a statement that they have arrested 2 human traffickers, RM and TS, in the Merendan red light district in Pekanbaru. So it seems like one of the human trafficker allegedly operate his human trafficking operation in Banten, while another one was an owner of a bar in Pekanbaru. The women were promised work in the bar, but when they arrived in Pekanbaru, they were forced to also work as sex workers, in fact without pay, and barred from using communication device. So human trafficking is a huge issue, and glad that Indonesia is taking the responsibility to curtail this, not just on the federal level, but it seems like even on the state level. So when it comes to human trafficking, it's such a huge issue that, of course, priority has to be given, not just for the Jokowi's government, but I think as a whole, Malaysian government as well. It's seldom being discussed in Malaysia, interestingly. Even among civil society, majority of the issues are related to how Malaysia would face, on a day-to-day basis, the kind of issues, but very little focus on the migrant workers and also on the plight of migrant workers when it comes to human trafficking. So definitely glad that Indonesia is providing the focus there and trying to address it, although the difficulty is definitely there because corruption and involvement of state officials in worsening the issues of human trafficking is definitely a main concern. I guess Jokowi's government priority should definitely focus on trying to clean the government of the civil servant and those working on the ground, to ensure that they really do their job and they really not take corruption as part of the lifestyle that probably some of the Indonesian forces, policemen or military forces used to do it. So cracking down on that could be the first step to achieve or combat human trafficking. We will take another short break. When we return, we will talk about the Philippines, politics, as well as focus on the Myanmar student crackdown and also ASEAN as a whole.
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene. You're back again with us on news from Southeast Asia, our ASEAN Daily. So, in the Philippines, the people in the Philippines are quitting over the Maman Sapo Pinoy. The Pinoy ally is quitting over Maman Sapo's cover-up. In fact, more accusation has been furthered towards President Aquino. A key congressional ally quit his position as he accused the country's leader, President Aquino, of engaging in a brazen cover-up of his role in the botched police operation where 44 elite commanders were demised during a hunt down towards the two terrorists. One of it is a Malaysian called Marwan. Unfortunately, he can no longer support the president in engaging in the brazen cover-up of his role in the Maman Sapo tragedy. He said that he cannot support a man whose behavior is a disgrace to the presidency. And this was said by Walden Bello, one of the key congressional allies. In fact, Bello noted that he is withdrawing his support to the president, who has kept on washing his hand of responsibility over a mission that he allegedly planned and was executed on his order. So the drama over the President Aquino's trying to cover up in front of a Congress that is less and less believing the story or the narrative that he's trying to portray. So with the quitting of Walden Bello is hitting really hard towards the president, and I think the approval rating of the president is also going down the drain with this accusation and drama surrounding President Aquino's weak leadership, as well as his inability to ensure a smooth anti-terrorist operation where 44 people were killed, and these people are the elites of the cream of the crop of the commanders in the Philippines. In fact, what a few other people regarding on Bello's resignation said that numerically it is a loss, but really considering more than 92% of everyone in the Congress belong to the majority bloc, it doesn't really matter if one or two drops out. But principle is principle. Even though one person drops out, even though numbers might not matter, but one person drops out would affect in fact the voices on the ground, the perception of the people of the Philippines towards its president. Another view is there's no need for a loyalty check. Actions will speak louder than loyalty check. The withdrawal of the support is the decision of the Congressman Bello has made. He's entitled to it, and it is good for him and the Congress that he can concentrate on other things. So some people might not be too optimistic with Bello's resignation. but overall is a message towards President Aquino to get his all his things together, to get himself together and not be able and not create another mess towards the Philippines' trust on his presidency. Another news that is gaining ground is the Myanmar activist arrest. In fact, from just mere months of where students were in Myanmar were protesting against the national education law. Yesterday we witnessed, or 2 days ago, we witnessed a huge clash between the police and the Myanmar student, where the police really cracked down and arrested many students. Now we see families of scores of arrested Myanmar activists sought news of their loved one who were detained by police in a violent student protest crackdown as fears grow of a return to junta-era repression. Would it go back to that era of repression? Is still a developing news, but what we are seeing right now, police arms with baton lash out against young students and activists in the central town of Lepadan, arresting 127 people, carting them off to the calls by the truckload. From what we see in the Yangon crackdown, men wearing red armbands thought to be disputee civilians beating protesters alongside police. So this is not good for the Myanmar government. In fact, especially the whole world is eyeing on Myanmar's transition towards democracy. Will they actually able to do so? Not just economically but politically. Definitely the crackdown is a 10 step backwards towards the direction that Myanmar is supposed to go. So talking about ASEAN, ASEAN is definitely a focus for Malaysia this year, and Malaysia wants more ASEAN cooperation against Islamic State. IS has been such a big deal in Southeast Asia. Many recruits, most of them young people, comes from Malaysia and Indonesia, and despite numerous meetings, why there hasn't been a solid plan to somehow curtail Islamic states. Especially young people in Southeast Asia are being influenced by the messages, especially with high quality video production and social media messages that has been spewed towards the younger generation in Southeast Asia. Speaking at a conference, Malaysia Foreign Ministry Anifah said that the movement was far more dangerous than any terrorist organization the world have ever faced. It is so ideologically influencing that young people are going by the truckload towards ISIS, fighting alongside people from all over the world. And he said that it enjoys much more support than Al-Qaeda, which remains a marginal movement, and that it had all the resources of an organized state and was seen by many as potential recruits as a winning team. But Malaysia, which is one of the key ASEAN states affected by ISIS, has repeatedly been stressing the need for the regional grouping to do so. In fact, Singapore even has lended its hand as well. Other countries would be Myanmar, because ISIS is definitely crippling the whole of Southeast Asia. That's all from our news commentary today. We will continue with a heated discussion on Indonesia's death penalty with the Indonesia's representative to ICHR, the Human Rights Intergovernmental Commission of ASEAN. Stay tuned.